B-29 Superfortress is famous for its role in the atomic bombings, but it had a lesser-known rival, the consolidated B-32 Dominator. Developed as a backup for the B-29, the B-32 saw limited combat in the Pacific. In a tragic postscript to World War II, a B-32 reconnaissance mission over Japan was attacked by Japanese fighters after the war had ended, resulting in the final American combat death of World War II. The Dominator program was soon cancelled in favor of the B-29. The Boeing B-29 Superfortress heavy bomber achieved fame and infamy for its role in the atomic bombings of the Japanese cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Developing the huge bombers, which could lug heavy bomb loads over long distances at high altitudes and speeds, amounted to the most expensive weapons program undertaken by the United States during World War II, more expensive even the Manhattan Project. However, the Superfortress actually had a little-known rival developed by the manufacturer Consolidated, better known for its mass production of the B-24 Liberator heavy bomber. Had the Superfortress failed to perform as expected, the so-called B-32 Dominator was to be the fallback option. However, the B-29 actually did end up performing according to expectations when it began operations in the Pacific Theater in 1944. But Consolidated still produced more than 100 B-32s which were deployed into action in mid-1945. In fact, Dominator crews fought the last U.S. air battle of World War II tragically, after the war had ended. The program for a super heavy bomber actually predated Pearl Harbor. However, Consolidated's project, which used the B-24 as its basis, fell considerably behind Boeing's development of the B-29. The hulking bomber went through several permutations. Its original design included twin rudder tail and bizarre configuration mounting 20mm cannons to fire rearward from each engine nacelle, but these elements were eventually ditched. In the end, the B-32 was most visually distinguished by its enormous tail, which stretched 10 meters tall. The Dominator wound up resembling the B-29 in key performance parameters. Both aircraft used 4 Wright 3350-23 Cyclone engines for power, had a maximum speed of around 358 miles per hour, as fast as an early war Bf-109E fighter, and could lug a huge bomb load of 20,000 pounds. The B-32's defensive armament included 10 conventionally manned machine guns, operated by a similar number of crew. However, though Consolidated also tried to implement the pressurized fuselage and remote control gun turrets that were features on the B-29, it eventually gave up due to technical difficulties. This resulted in the Dominator being considered a low or medium altitude bomber, when compared to the B-29. On the other hand, the B-32 had a nearly 20% greater range of 3,800 miles, and could maintain a much higher cruising speed of 290 miles per hour, compared to 230 for the B-29. The Dominator also benefited from reversible pitch propellers and the thick Davis wing inherited from the B-24, which minimized drag at lower speeds and especially useful quality while attempting to land. Despite the B-32's upsides, the Army Air Corps was largely satisfied by the B-29's performance and only dispatched 3 B-32s for operational testing in the Philippines at the request of the 5th Air Force. Eventually transferred to the 386th Bombardment Squadron, the Dominators conducted a series of raids against Japanese forces in the Philippines and the island of Formosa, modern-day Taiwan. The targets in Taiwan included a sugar mill and an alcohol plant, indicative of just how far-reaching and indiscriminate the U.S. strategic bombing campaign against Japan had become. The 386th was fully outfitted with B-32s in July, and in August was redeployed to Yontan Airfield at Okinawa, where it was reassigned to flying photo reconnaissance missions over Japan. On the evening of August 15, Emperor Hirohito made a speech declaring his intention to surrender and ordering the armed forces to cease resistance. While anticipating the surrender of Japanese forces on the USS Missouri in September 2, the Army Air Corps continued reconnaissance overflights of Tokyo to verify compliance with the terms of surrender and scout out the road network for the occupation forces. However, Japanese fighter pilots on the ground perceived the overflying bombers in a different light. One Japanese ace, Saburo Sakai, later claimed that they feared the American bombers were returning to bomb Tokyo in violation of the surrender, and decided they were justified in attacking them. Another Japanese ace, Tsutomu Kamachi, simply stated that they were infuriated by seeing the American bombers flying unopposed over the Japanese capital after the immense devastation wrought by American bombs. To put things in perspective, earlier that year on March 9, 1945, American B-29s had dropped thousands of cluster bombs loaded with napalm bomblets over working-class residential areas of Tokyo, igniting a firestorm which sucked the air out of lungs and melted concrete. The conflagration killed around 100,000 Japanese civilians, more than died in either atomic bombing. Thus on August 17, Japanese fighters intercepted the reconnaissance B-32s and harried them for 2 hours while the bomber crews shot back with .50 caliber machine guns, neither side inflicting much damage on the other. The surprised bomber unit decided to dispatch of a follow-up recon mission on August 18 to investigate whether the intercept was an isolated incident. It's worth noting that that same day, Japanese forces in the Kuril Islands also engaged in air battles against Russian aircraft supporting a surprise amphibious invasion, another post-surrender conflict which would take several days to sputter to a halt. At 7 a.m. on the morning of the 18th, two B-32s set out for Tokyo again, each plane loaded with 3 additional photorecon specialists drawn from the 20th Reconnaissance Squadron. The extra crew normally flew aboard F-7s, a reconnaissance version of the B-24. By 2 p.m. the two B-32s completed their runs over Tokyo at altitudes of 10 and 20,000 feet when they noticed Japanese fighters rising from their aerodrome towards them. In fact, records show 14 A-6M0 fighters and 3 N-1KJ Shurden, Lightning, fighters launched to intercept from Yokosuka Air Base. The Shurden was one of the best Japanese fighters of the war, capable of exceeding 400 miles per hour and well armed with 4 fast-firing 20mm cannons, though it had relatively poor performance at high altitude. Nonetheless, the aircraft swarmed over the larger B-32s, their machine guns and cannons chattering. The 10.50 caliber machine guns on each bomber were soon spitting back curtains of lead in response. Both the bomber crew and fighter pilots on that last mission recalled what happened next. Screaming down from 12 o'clock high, Kamachi raked the engine of the B-32 named Hobo Queen II with his 20mm cannons and burst the plexiglass bubble of the top turret, wounding turret gunner Jimmy Smart. Another fighter strafed Hobo Queen's fuselage, the round slicing through the plane and riddling the legs of aerial photographer Joseph Lacquerate. The wounded specialist began applying a tourniquet to his wounds, and fellow photographer Sergeant Anthony Marchioni, a 19-year-old Italian-American from the Bronx, helped move him to a cot.